Hello, ladies. Happy Tuesday. Happy almost quarantine is over. I hope you are doing wonderfully this week. Spring is here for most of us in the country, depending on what part of the world you are living in. So I hope you are experiencing a little bit of spring fever, a little bit of an uplift in your mood. And I wanted to go live with you today to talk about a very common pattern I see in women. This might be a pattern that you identify with, and this is that of being an overachiever. And I've shared a little bit about this in previous lives that I've done. I wanted to go deeper with it this week, particularly today, and talk to you about how this, first of all, why this happens, why it's so difficult to break this pattern, and you know, the consequences of being an overachiever. Most of the time when we identify as being a type A, an overachiever, a high achiever, even a perfectionist, that usually stems from a need early on in life, perhaps in your childhood, to prove your worth. You may have grown up in an environment where you had a parent who perhaps was disapproving in some way. You did not get your needs met emotionally from that person or both parents. And that in turn instilled this drive within you to constantly be striving, to constantly be seeking approval. And as we move forward in life, especially if we had a turbulent childhood, the tendency can be to continue to take that drive and that striving and that need to do in our adult lives. And so I often see many women who come from, you know, an unhealthy childhood, and then they move forward into their adult life. They get a great career, they have children, they have hobbies, their, you know, social lives are thriving on the outside. And yet what tends to be the missing piece, or the thing that they can't quite get right, is their romantic or intimate relationships tend to be lacking. They get with people who are narcissistic. They attract underachievers. They attract unavailable partners, emotionally unavailable partners. They attract turbulence in their intimate relationships. And so one of the big, you know, the big fears that I find in women who have all of life going for them, quote unquote, is that they're deeply afraid of being seen. They're deeply afraid of being found out, that perhaps they're unlovable, that perhaps there's something wrong with them. They're afraid of being abandoned. They're afraid of being left. Many people that we work with here have a fear that if they were to meet a healthy partner or attract that into their lives, that they wouldn't be able to trust their judgment to know whether he's right for them or he's wrong for them, because they've been so used to not trusting their intuition in previous relationships and repeatedly being burned, or they're afraid that they're going to somehow sabotage the relationship and push that person away. And it's not a fun place to be. It's definitely a catch-22 that we see a lot of women staying stuck in for, sadly, a very long period of time in their life. And so much so that it just becomes the norm. It just becomes the way of life. And to think of a different possibility is foreign. It's like speaking a foreign language. You want to understand it, but you can't. You just can't wrap your brain around it. And that combination of just being the way of life and not being able to see or believe in a different outcome or possible future with someone healthy, a life where you're not in fear, a life where you can receive and enjoy your life without so much doing and overachieving. It just feels like it's impossible for them. So why do we attract toxic people if we have everything going for us on the surface in our life? Why do we tend to attract people who are less than, or tend to be projects or fixer-uppers, when we do everything that we can to get going and moving forward in our lives? And the biggest reason is that there's an energetic dynamic. And I've shared this before. I'm going to share it here again. when we have a need to do a lot, there is a fear that if we stop doing, we won't be enough, we won't be perfect, we won't be we won't be worthy, we won't be lovable. And that it's a subconscious drive to keep proving and to keep striving and to keep doing in order to achieve, in order to get where you need to go. And energetically, if you were to attract somebody who is also a high achiever, there's usually a tendency for that energetic vibration, that match, to butt heads. It doesn't work. They don't have time for each other. There can be a tendency of it's not quite the right fit. It can work in a healthy dynamic when both people are conscious of their own patterns and are willing to communicate and work through that. But with someone who is still largely unconscious of her pattern, what tends to happen is she unknowingly seeks someone who is an underachiever. She seeks someone who has potential, and she falls for what that person could be versus the reality of the situation. And instead of accepting the reality of that situation, she in turn tries and strives and applies her overachieving behavior patterns to help this person be the best version of themselves, often at the expense of her own emotional, mental, financial, oftentimes physical well-being and sanity. And that, my friends, is the definition of codependency. And sadly, we see many, many women getting stuck on that hamster wheel of continuously attracting unavailable partners in some way. They fall for potential, they fall for projects, and because they are such fixers and doers and achievers, they apply that same behavior to their partner in the hopes that he will become or she will become the partner that they want them to be. And sadly, that rarely works. And most of the time, we see women doing this so many times over and over again, spending so many years in that pattern, that they become jaded. They become fearful. They don't trust their intuition. And not only do they not trust themselves in love, but they start to not trust themselves in their own lives, and they remain stuck and stagnant. They stop growing and they stop evolving, and blindly continue to attract unfortunate situations, less than situations. They move through life, they're doing all the right things, but they still feel like something is missing and they're not quite getting what that is. So the overachieving can really blind a lot of people to their own blind spots and keep them stuck. The second biggest reason why overachievers tend to attract underachievers, tend to attract toxic partners, is because at the very root of being an overachiever, there's a fundamental belief that you are not enough, which is rooted in lack, in scarcity, and fear. And there's a belief that if we just do one more thing, if we just try harder, if we just get more counseling, if we just read another book, if we just work on ourselves a little harder, that eventually we will break the cycle and we'll get the great guy, we'll get the great life that we want, and we won't feel so stuck, and we won't feel so lonely, and we won't have this pervasive feeling that something is inherently wrong with us. We won't feel like the black sheep anymore. And that is that belief, that the belief behind overachieving is false. And the belief, what's really happening is that she doesn't feel enough. And this isn't a conscious feeling most of the time. This isn't something that, people wake up with in the morning and they go, gosh, I don't feel like I'm enough. This is something that is a subconscious program, and without fail, again and again, will show up in her intimate relationships with people that mirror back that she is not enough. They'll mirror that back by being emotionally unavailable. They'll mirror that back by being emotionally abusive and manipulating and gaslighting her, so that she once again has to strive and prove her worth and prove that she's enough and cling and hang on and overachieve in that relationship dynamic. She will attract people who maybe aren't available for her in the sense that they don't have enough time for her. So there's always a sense of lack and not getting what she needs in her relationships, because at the root, underneath her behavior of overachieving, she does not feel like she's enough. And so one of the hardest things that can be, that one of the most challenging aspects of breaking this pattern is learning how to stop overachieving and stop doing so much. And I see a lot of women fear doing that, fear taking that on, because they fear that if they stop, they're not going to be enough. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword. So in essence, the true path of learning how to undo that pattern of being an overachiever is learning how to fully accept and rewrite new programs and beliefs. Learn how to discover that believing that you're enough doesn't mean that you need to be doing and achieving so much in your life, right? The third last piece that I'm going to share with you, why overachieving and why doing keeps people stuck. I talked about this in a recent talk that I gave for VIA University. Often when we have codependent traits, when we get into toxic relationships, we, again, take on that role of fixing, of doing, of achieving, of trying to get the person to be what we want them to be for us. And often when we exit that toxic relationship, we do whatever we can to move forward with our life. We get into counseling, we do free seminars, we read books, we get into coaching programs, we do all kinds of things to further the ball down the field, to further advance our healing in the least amount of time as possible. And often what happens is that busyness, that overachieving shows up in her healing, and she doesn't truly give herself the time and the space, the emotional spaciousness, the permission to be still with herself and to allow herself to face her own sense of unworthiness, her own feeling that she's ugly, that she's defective, that she's ashamed in some way. And as human beings, and I've said this many times before, I'm going to say it again, we're just wired, we are hardwired to avoid uncomfortable feelings as much as possible. And we're wired to seek an emotional high. We're wired to seek an emotional peak experience, a reward. And so oftentimes overachieving can sabotage your healing, because you are taking that busyness and that striving and that doing in an attempt to do as much as you can, to do whatever it takes to overcome your pattern, that you miss the forest for the trees, if you will. You miss the opportunity to be still with yourself. You miss the opportunity to fully accept what's going on underneath the surface, to accept the feelings of unworthiness, to accept the feelings that you feel defective, to accept that you are lonely a lot, to accept that you feel like the black sheep, that you feel like something is wrong with you. And when we sidestep that opportunity to feel our feelings, we just perpetuate more unhealthy coping, which oftentimes in women that we work with is staying chronically busy and getting into anxiety, right? Our body gets addicted to our own anxiety. Our body gets addicted to our problems. We talk about our problems. We talk about our story. Our heart rate kicks up. Our breath shortens. We start tensing up in our body. That just becomes an automatic habit that over time, it's just the lens that we live life from. And the more that we live life from fear, the more that we live life from a pervasive sense of something is wrong with me, the more that we live life in scarcity and lack and uncertainty, the more we unconsciously attract people and situations into our lives that mirror back that lack and scarcity. That shows up as financial scarcity, that shows up as partners who aren't available for us, that shows up as, something good happens and then immediately we start worrying about waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? We don't trust that we can truly have it all. we can have a great abundant life. We can manifest prosperity, and we can have a great partner in our lives that won't abandon us. So the real healing comes when you can allow yourself to stop being an overachiever, when you can allow yourself to stop doing so much and allow yourself to land and find the missing piece that has been keeping you stuck for so long and that has halted your progress forward in your healing journey. So if anything that I said resonated for you today, if you're going, yes, why do I keep getting unavailable people? I do everything, right? People ask me all the time, why are you single? You have a great career. You've got it all going for you. You're educated. You're smart. You're attractive. Why are you single? If you're finding yourself repeating your pattern, no matter how much work that you have done on yourself, no matter how many years of counseling you've tried, and you're still feeling like you're missing something, you're not quite getting it, then book a call to chat with us and we will help you find out what's really going on, number one, and then number two, we'll help you discern the next steps that you need in order to finally end your cycle and wake up to your power, your confidence, your self-worth, and learn how to attract not only an abundant, free, joyous life, but the amazing, connected, transformative, healing relationship that you want. We are not here on earth to isolate. We are not here on earth to feel like something is wrong with us. We are here, we're wired for connection. We are wired to feel supported. We're wired to feel love. And over time, fear takes control of your car in your life. So if you're ready to become fearless, if you're ready to open your heart to an amazing life and an amazing partner and welcome that in and learn how to trust your intuition, then book some time to chat with us and we will help you get there. We will help you end the pervasive, stuck, stagnant cycle that you've been in all of this time and help you overcome that once and for all in your life. So to book some time, go to bethanydotson.com/apply. That's bethanydotson.com/apply. Myself or someone from my team will get on the phone with you. We'll get super clear on why all of the things you've tried, why you are still stuck, why you haven't quite gotten there yet. And most importantly, we'll talk about getting you all the way to where you want to go. So again, bethanydotson.com/apply. Book some time now. Life is short. Coronavirus is causing everybody to realize things about their life, realize their patterns. Book some time and we will help you overcome and end your pattern once and for all. If you have any comments or questions about what I shared with you today, please drop them below in the comment box and I will get back to you right away. And as always, I hope you're having a beautiful week. I hope that you're moving forward and I hope that you're believing in yourself because you are worth it. Have a good week.